initially, the Taliban is probably going to, do their best to try to tamp down that kind of stuff because for them it's just a win-win because they don't get troops in from China, so all they have to do is give up some rocks and they get a good price for them.
And what do you think the Taliban will end up doing with all that Chinese money?
Wasting it like they have for the last 20 years of wasted American money. We've poured trillions in there, and what's become of it? There'll be some improvements. There'll probably be some local, hospitals made and things of that nature. Some improvement to roads and some certainly mosques being built and things of that nature. But and it'll be corruption, and that's kind of the way it runs there. Look at this guy that was just left, Ghani. They said he had $176 million, $168 million, and he would have had more if his plane could have held it. So,
didn't China also, like just a few weeks before they met with the Taliban, didn't they also, Xi Jinping meet with him?
He called him.
They called him, yeah. So it seemed like China was really trying to play all sides of this.
Oh, yeah. That's what they do. And that's what most nations, great powers do, is that they have this awareness of everything that's going on in a country like that, and they're trying to make sure that they cover, they're hedging their bets, if you will.
Yeah, China hosted secret peace talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government back in 2015 in Xinjiang, in Urumqi. And it was kind of the first time they really inserted themselves into the Afghanistan situation.
Well, you're saying that the Chinese Communist Party interfered in another country's internal affairs?
They would never do that, Matt. Somebody pointed out on Twitter, and I think this is a good point, that China doesn't have a policy of not interfering in other countries' affairs. They have a policy of saying they don't interfere in other countries' internal affairs.
And on that, they've been very consistent.
Yes.
So, Jim, what do you think the Communist Party's overall goal in the Middle East is?
I think that they want to fill the vacuum that's going to be left by an America that's in retreat. They want to. Obviously, China has the number one concern for them is their internal security and the regime stability. But then part of that stability is required to, they're expanding with the Belt and Road and this economic development that they want to have around the world. And they have an engine. Their economy is an engine and their people are an engine. They have 1.4 billion people, so they need energy. And they have to import their energy, a lot of it. And so where's a lot of energy in the world? It's out in these areas. And so to be able to establish this Silk Road through these areas and have diplomatic outposts where you're now seen as the guy that people go to kiss the ring and say, okay, what do you think we should do, China? Or can you help us invest here? China's going to, seek to have that position. They've been doing that with Iran. They've even been reaching out to Saudi Arabia and other places like this to get inside this network and establish their own net, if you will, to be able to have access and relations, and then ultimately to be able to use those for their advantage and to get resources and energy. They need energy, and so this would be another way to do it. Even while they're working with Europe and America with the Green New Deal and climate change and going green. So on the one hand, they'll tell the Western world they're going green, but on the other hand, they're going to be working to get fossil fuels because they're going to need them. We all need them. That's the reality of that situation. We're not going to be able to just go, totally green as some people think that we can. And China knows that, and so they're going to continue to take advantage of that.
Well, so, some people might say, oh, China going into the Middle East to, meet its energy needs and, establish relations there and try to be a dominant foreign force. They're like, what's wrong with that? Because America has been doing that for decades.
Yeah, and that's a legitimate argument. And many of us in America said, why were we doing that? For most of my Navy career was, saying we needed to focus our attention on the Chinese Communist Party and not, divert our attention into the Middle East where we had the capability ourselves to be energy independent, in which the previous administration proved that from the first time ever since, you guys none of you were born. You don't remember the the energy oil crisis in the 70s and seeing people standing in line for gas and being at the mercy of OPEC. I remember that. I was, not that old, but I still remember it. And that was like 50 plus years ago. And so for 50 years, we've been under that sword of Damocles. And, we had an administration, the last one, come in and say, why are we doing that? Let's get out of the Middle East. Let's get out of our dependency. We have the natural resources that God gave us. Let's take advantage of it and use them here and not be so dependent on foreign nations. And oh, by the way, let's not, send our people into harm's way and have them be killed when we don't need to. And why, and on another more humane level, why should we be over there killing people from other countries for oil? I mean, it wasn't right. But that's what we did. And so now China's going to do that. The question is, how do they do it? And what are they going to do with all that power? And what are they going to do with all of those resources? And how are they going to, what's the quid pro quo with each of these nations? What do those nations have to do? Do they have to turn their backs on the United States at some point? Do they have to turn their backs on Israel? And will that unleash some kind of war in the Middle East because now all of a sudden China says we don't want to support Israel? I don't know. But there's many facets there. And so if another nation sticks their nose into it and starts trying to manipulate, the odds are historically that these cause controversies and disruptions and wars. So we have to be careful of that. My personal opinion is that, or feeling is, I'm giving you my opinions. My feeling is that China wants this because it fits their model or their mindset of this. They are the new superpower. It's Gordon Chang talks about Chen Jia and this all under heaven. They are the new rulers of the earth. That's what they really believe. And so they've got to have their network of diplomats and business people in all these countries and the relationships, and they need to be controlling things. They want to be the ones controlling the ebb and flow of commerce and goods and services and establishing a new order. And I think it's just natural that they do that. The question is, what does that mean for Americans? What does that mean for free people in other nations if you don't want to be part of that? And my fear is it's like what we're seeing in America and other places, Australia, New Zealand, with this virus. You're not going to be left alone. You're not going to be allowed to be left alone and do what you want. Freedom is no longer a commodity that seems to be valued anymore. We're former government officials in the United States saying, screw your freedom. Really? Screw the Constitution? Screw the 250 years of America? Yeah, that's what we're seeing. That's where we're headed. And China's going to be pushing that. And that scares me.
Do you think it was a mistake on the U.S.'s part to kind of invite China in to become a player in some of these regions? Not so much the Middle East, but I'm thinking Afghanistan, when China started getting involved with like the peace talks there, the U.S., was kind of like, yeah, we need more stakeholders in the situation. Or I'm reminded of like places like North Korea where, we were like, oh yes, the 6-party talks, we need to get China involved. Like, do you think it's a mistake to give China that type of global like recognition and like treat them like they should be, what
to
we
treat
think,
them like they're the superpower they
right?
want.
Or like we think, oh, we want them to be a responsible global actor, and that means they're going to come in but like they're going to be like us. They're just going to be like the UK or France or Germany.
Yeah, we've talked about this, I think, the last time about this Kissinger school and the engagement community. And since Kissinger made his trip to China, we switched our recognition. The dominant foreign policy view out of Washington has been, we must engage with China. We must engage with China. We must build bridges with them because the future of the world is dependent upon us having good relations. And initially it was so we could triangulate with them and, keep Russia and the Soviet Union at bay. And then it morphed over the last 40 years into this, well, they're growing. They're 1.4 billion people. And if we don't engage with them, then they'll be an adversary and that'll be very dangerous for us. And we don't want that. And so we legitimize them through all these invitations that you described, like the 6-party talks. And I would just, ask, can anybody show me a place where inviting China into be a third party or a fifth or sixth party into a negotiation that was in the U.S. national interest or the interest of one of our allies has ever worked out. None. I don't see anything that's worked out.
Yeah.
You could even say this Afghanistan event hasn't worked out. I mean, we have 10,000 people still on the ground. If China was really a legitimate superpower and doing what they say they do, peaceful development and helping other nations, then how come we still have 10,000 people there? They didn't help. They didn't help anything, and we may find out someday that they actually were responsible for helping those 10,000 people be held captive right now. That they told the Taliban, your best move is to put a wire around the Kabul airport, a ring of steel, and not let anybody in. That's your best way to have leverage over the Americans. Who knows? We won't know that probably ever, but it's possible.